All right, for this problem, it says to solve the equation negative 8x plus 7 equals x squared minus 7x plus 5 by graphing. Now, when we solve an equation by graphing, we have to have it in the form 0 equals ax squared plus bx plus c. Because if you think about what the solution is the zeros of the function. In order for it to be 0 of the function, that means the function equals 0. So it has to be written so that the function, which is this part right here, equals 0, right? And so when we look at what they're giving us, it does not look like this, right? So the very first thing we have to do is we have to make it look like that. So I'm going to rewrite this here. We have negative 8x plus 7 equals x squared minus 7x plus 5. So very first thing we're going to do is we're going to get everything over to one side. And I usually try to get it to the side where x squared is positive, but it really doesn't matter. I could move these three things over here, or I could move these two things over here. It's probably easier to move two things. So when we do that, right, there's two ways to think about it. The first way is just, you know, if you're moving something, you do the opposite of what it is. So if I'm going to move this negative 8x over to the other side, I'm going to go plus 8x. Right? So we got plus 8x plus 8x. The other way to think about it is when you take something and you move it over to the other side and it's crossing the equal sign, you change its sign. So it gets you to the same place, right? It's just two different ways of thinking about it. So that will move the negative 8x over, and then to get the 7 over, we're going to subtract it because it's positive right here, so we're going to subtract it. So that's going to zero out this side, which is what we want, and that's going to give us x squared. And I lined it up purposely like this because you got to remember, how do we collect like terms, right? And I can only combine the x with the other x's, and I can only combine constants with other constants. So this is going to give me x squared plus x minus 2. And so that is my equation now. Now I am going to graph it, and when I graph it, where it crosses the x-axis, which is this thing right here, is going to be my solution, or solutions, depending on what it looks like when I graph it. So let's start by finding our axis of symmetry, because that's how we always start graphing a quadratic equation. So we have x equals negative b over 2a. Well, b is 1, so it's going to be negative 1 over 2 times, and then my a term is also 1. Right? So because there's nothing being shown, that means my coefficient's 1, not 0. All right? So that gives me negative 1 over 2, or negative 1/2. So my vertex is going to be the point negative 1/2, comma, something. So I'm going to take this, and we are now going to put it into this equation right here. So we have 0 equals negative 1/2 squared plus negative 1/2 minus 2. All right, so that is going to give me 1/4 minus 1/2 minus 2. Okay, and it's minus 1/2 because when you drop that, it's just adding a negative is the same as subtracting it. And so now let's write this in terms of fourths, right? So that's going to give me 1/4 minus 2/4 minus 2, and let's write 2 in terms of fourths as well, minus 8/4. And I picked 4 because 4 is my common denominator, because we have 4, 2, and 1, right? And the smallest number they all go into is 4. So that's why I chose that. So you have 1 minus 2, which is negative 1, minus 8, which is negative 9. So my answer is negative 9/4. And that's going to be the y-coordinate of my vertex, right? Which is kind of ugly, right? Especially if you're graphing it, I'm not going to lie. So we're going to go over here, we're going to go to we'll go to negative 1/2, which is between 0 and 1, right? And we're going to go down to negative 9/4. So if we're going by ones, it's 1, 2, and negative 9/4 is negative 2 and 1/4. And I figured that out because 4 goes into 9 2 times with 1 left over, So that's why it's negative 2 and 1/4. So I'm going to go to negative 2, and I'm going to go down just a little bit more and put a dot right there. That's about as close as I can get it with this graph. So now we're going to plot, I'm going to plot 3 points this time. And the reason I'm choosing to do 3 and not 2 is because I'm going to still pick integers, but because I'm picking ones that are really close, it's not going to open up enough for me to be able to see where it crosses the x-axis. It might not open up enough, so I want to make sure it does. So I'm going to pick 3 because I got to see where it crosses the x-axis, because that's the whole point of doing this. All right, there's my equation. That's my y. So I'm going to pick in this case the next 3 integer values. All right, so that would be 0, 1, and 2. So I'm going to go 0, 1, and 2. So if I put 0 in, I have 0 squared plus 0 minus 2, which gives me negative 2, because 0 plus 0 is 0, and 0 minus 2 is negative 2. If I put 1 in, I have 1 squared plus 1 minus 2. Well, 1 squared is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2, and 2 minus 2 is 0. All right, this is going pretty straightforward, right? And then when you put 2 in, that's when this thing starts to get positive, right? 2 squared is 4. 4 plus 2 is 6. 6 minus 2 is 4. All right, so those are my points here. And so I'm going to plot them, and I'm going to reflect them. So for 0, I'm going to have 0, negative 2. Well, that's really close to this, right? So we got that and this. And remember, my angle of reflection is right here. Okay, and if I put 1 in, I have 1 and 0. And so I'm going to reflect that over. That's going to go right there. And then I have 2 and 4. So that's 2 right there. And then we go up to 4. Puts me right here. And I'm going to reflect that. It's right here. So it's going to go over 1 more here and be right there. So a little trickier reflecting it, but it's the same idea. And then when you draw your parabola, it should look kind of like that. As we all know, my parabola drawing skills leave a lot to be desired. My right sides are usually better than my left, but not always. All right, where's this thing crossing the x-axis? Well, it's crossing the x-axis here and here. And we can see that we already got one of them right here, because that's where my y is equal to 0. Okay, so my solutions are going to be x equals 1, okay, because that was this one. And then the reflected one, which is negative 2. So these are my solutions to the equation that I was able to find from solving by graphing. And I hope that this is a good review for how to graph, and just a conceptual, visual representation of what a solution to a quadratic looks like, so that when we start solving these by factoring them, you know how it relates. Okay, so these are the roots, the zeros, the solution, whatever you want to call it, they're all kind of the same thing, right? And that's it. So that's this one. Thanks for following along, and we'll see on problem number 4.